Seve, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty good.
Love to hear
pretty
it.
good. I am once again cutting coffee out. I have some green tea, but I am cutting coffee out because every once in a while I realize like coffee is like I do so well at first, and then it begins going downhill. I don't know if it's like that for you.
You mean at first for like the first whatever week, month, or something you have it, or you mean like the first hour after each instance, acutely?
Yeah, it's like my best days. I think I have caffeine.
Okay.
I think like if I'm really on a roll, if I'm in the zone, I think I like 50% of the time I had coffee that day.
You know, the dangerous thing about that statement is I think that a lot of people who would be taking heroin would say that my favorite days I have heroin. And, you know, look, if we say the same thing about caffeine and whatever, in 6 decades they work out that it's just atrocious for us in some ungodly way.
That's true. Probably like a...
Probably order of magnitude lower, let's be real.
Right.
Or like maybe a few orders of magnitude.
People were probably saying that about cocaine, right?
People were probably saying...
there was a lot of cocaine
and morphine,
in business.
You know.
Morphine.
It was around.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. There were functional morphine people, I think, at some point.
There was a lot of them. It was in a whole bunch of the like cough syrups and things as well, right? Back in the day.
Oh my gosh, really?
Yeah, you'd give it to kids. I know, crazy. Last night, I heard Brian Johnson talk. You know Brian Johnson?
I love Brian Johnson. I'm going to the conference. What's it called? The Don't Die conference in San Francisco.
Oh, incredible.
It's in San Francisco.
So for anyone listening who doesn't know Brian Johnson, he started this movement, Don't Die. The premise of which is that if you are, whoever you are in the world, doesn't matter who you are, I think we can all agree on one thing, and that is this moment, right now, don't die. Like not in the future, no complicating it, no altruism, no morals, no nothing. Just don't die. We should all just not die.
Just live. Yeah.
Just live.
Yeah. You probably shouldn't die. It's not pleasant. Nobody is happy. Generally.
No one that I've spoken to said that it was a great idea. They would totally do it again.
But like I'm dying, but it feels about like it's time. And people don't usually say that.
No. So maybe sometime, but you know, it's one of those things. Anyway, really interesting guy, and his sort of end of this movement at the moment is obviously super focused on his health.
Right.
It's incredible. And he's so self-aware, actually. Like listening to him for so long, last night it was, I think, 2.5 hours, was really interesting.
Did he speak at a conference? What's the context of the video? Was he on a podcast?
There was an event at Y Combinator.
Oh, yeah. Gotcha. Cool.
So he came by. It was just sort of anyone associated with Y Combinator gets invited to this type of thing somewhat often. And his was, you know, packed to the walls, packed to the rafters, as you imagine. And it was really interesting because he has gone so deep with like 30 health experts on exactly what is best for him. And the metric he looks at is his sort of his biological aging.
Yeah.
And he looks at like the methylation of his DNA and a few other markers to get through this, and experimented in every imaginable way. He's like really quite white, has like incredibly young looking skin because he's gone through, you know, a whole bunch of treatments to reverse skin damage in a lot of ways. His lungs are like age 19, I think he said.
Whoa, all right.
Which is, incredible. I don't know where he lives, but, you know, maybe not in the city.
I want to say he lives in LA normally. I could be wrong though.
Really? Okay. Interesting.
Yeah, he's got a house and it's decked out like bottom of ceiling windows, but the windows block tons, like all the light, right? it shines through really weird because one of the things I hear Brian Johnson talking a lot about is how the sun is not so good for you, especially to the extent that people get it, like going to the beach without sunscreen, stuff like that. That's pretty bad.
It's pretty nasty.
Yeah.
So one of the stats that was really interesting is by age 60, you have a 40% chance of having cancer.
Wow. Oh boy,
pretty high.
That's a stat that makes you want to avoid things. That's a stat that makes you want to act.
yeah, it's insane. And that's not to say that this is a malignant cancer or, you know, high grade cancer that you are going to have a serious problem treating. But as with anything, like the earlier you get into it, the better.
Yeah.
And so his recommendation as well was actually to have an MRI he said from 40 you should really do it, but even from 30, have an MRI every year because it's the best at detecting cancers.
Every year? Wow.
Every year, right.
Yeah, that's a lot.
I know. And
have you had an MRI?
I've never had one, no.
I got a baseline MRI.
Okay.
Yeah, so nothing wrong with me.
Do you have the scan?
Yeah, I have all the scans.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, I have like all these 3D images of my body.
What file format is it?
There's
Is it
a
an
couple.
STL or you?
No, not an STL. There's a couple standards. It's basically like you get the raw data. I used a service called Pronuvo,
Okay.
and you do get the raw data, I think, from the machine. I think they just give you everything.
Okay.
But they will visualize it for you, and then in the app, you can see a bunch of, you can like see animations of MRIs are like, they kind of like do things over, or they scan over time, so they can see how blood moves and stuff
Yeah.
like that. So you can kind of see all this stuff. And then they do like a very light analysis of it, like, oh, like you have like some degradation in your spinal disc here,
Yep.
stuff like that. But so nothing came up for me, so that's great. But the cool thing is now in 5 years or 10 years or something, or if just I get hurt, I now have a baseline. I can go back and go, oh, this is how my spine is supposed to look. Or,
Ooh, it does not look like that anymore.
this changed. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, that's so interesting. And how much was that, if you don't mind me asking?
That was around 3,500, I think,
Ooh,
for
wow.
the full suite. And then I think it can get as low as 1,500 or 2,000 if you want less. But I wanted to get everything, so I
Got the full suite of tests.
I got the full suite. If anybody wants it in the description, I'll put my affiliate link. No, I'm just kidding.
I've heard of people doing the same thing in Turkey for about $800.
Really?
Yeah, health tourism in Turkey is really big at the moment. It's interesting because it's one of these countries that has been going through some hyperinflation at the moment.
Right.
But the amount of industry and high grade education in Turkey is actually really incredibly high.
Yeah.
I've seen a whole bunch of dental CNC machines made in Turkey. Obviously, famously, the Bayraktar drones in Ukraine more recently. Their medical system is seemingly incredible from what I've seen of it. And so I sincerely hope it's a good injection in their economy, but it's insane. Like you go in, you have this litany of tests. You have, MRI and the full shebang. I imagine you got all sorts of bloods and baselines done for everything you could possibly imagine. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense to me. I've heard of people going out of the States. I think even Brian Johnson went out of the States a couple times for different procedures, but not always on cost. Sometimes you just can't get things in the U.S. that you can get in other places.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
For those in the pod who cannot see my wink.
Have you ever heard of, there's this person on Twitter, Ayala, I think is her name?
No, never come across it.
But she runs a bunch of or she did this procedure where they put a different type of bacteria in your mouth.
Oh, no way.
And it actually colonizes, and then you're supposed to just basically not be able to get cavities.
Really?
Yeah, but the thing is because that you have a bacteria that colonizes in your mouth so easily, people are worried what if you kiss someone and it spreads and then all of a sudden the entire population has it without adequate testing?
Yeah,
or something
and we
like
realized that it maybe wasn't the best thing to have.
Right. Maybe this wasn't a good idea. Yeah.
Yeah, incredible. Have you seen, I think it was Eastern Europe, it was like Soviet kind of bloc technology. They have used viruses as antibiotics instead of chemical molecules that kill bacteria broadly, sort of these broader spectrum things. The premise is, and I cannot remember the term, I wish I did, but basically you go find some really disgusting, dirty water because there are viruses that attack bacteria.
Right.
There are far more of them than viruses that attack mammals. There's way more bacteria and way more diversity of it.
Yeah.
So go find some nasty water that has a lot of bacteria. Now, extract those viruses from that water, leave those bacteria behind, take a sample of the bacteria that's causing the infection, and figure out which of those viruses is able to attack that effectively.
Oh, interesting.
And because our biology is so different from whatever bacteria is causing you that trouble,
Right.
it's fundamentally different, right? we're pretty sure, like fingers crossed, but pretty sure that those viruses, like there's no way they're coming across realistically.
Wow.
Right?
That seems like something, I guess it's kind of like this, because with COVID, we did some experiments with new stuff, quote unquote new stuff, but there's like a lot of things that we know how to do, but we don't necessarily employ it until we really have to, until like a lot of people are dying, and then we're like, all right, let's up the ante.
mRNA, let's go.
Yeah, exactly. mRNA, that was the technology. Yeah. Which I guess has existed, and many people are like, this is super safe forever, but I don't think it was deployed at the scale, at least. Of COVID.
No. And the other thing I've read since then as well, because there was this, from what I understand, it was actually a misconception that it's been that it's been around for such a long time, because we've been able to do it in some ways, or like on bacteria in a petri dish or whatever, and within, continuously within the last, whatever it is, like I guess 5 years ago now, there were breakthroughs that meant that we could make it into a vaccine for the first time in order to stabilize it and deploy it through the blood and all that type of thing. And that was really exciting for a whole bunch of those researchers, because originally they were developing it as a cancer treatment, I believe, was the primary objective of some of the core technologists.
Never meant for flu or what's COVID? It's coronavirus, right? Yeah. Never meant for coronaviruses. Very interesting.
Never meant for immunization.
We're quickly getting into the COVID conspiracy territory. We may want to steer clear.
Have you heard of ivermectin?
Oh, yeah. Have you heard of bleach? No. But anyway, something I wanted to talk about is last week we did a housewarming at an office warming at the new Autopile office.
I don't sleep there for legal reasons.
I was super tempted to sleep when Seam got the first office. I was super tempted to sleep there because we got like apartment/office living, which is kind of a thing in San Francisco.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, it has a kitchen and everything. And the Autopile office is very similar. It's got everything you could need. It's two levels, right?
It's 2 floors. Yeah. Atopile's office it's awesome. We walked in and we went to our realtor and we went, Charlie, like, mate, we can't afford this place. Like, we gave you our budget. Like, what are you doing? And he's like, that is the best bit, actually. It is really, really an incredible deal. And you'd be a bit nuts not to take it. We were, oh, yeah, sure, it's a realtor. But no, it's an incredible office.
How many offices did you go to before you found this one?
Oh, like so many. We probably went to like 30 total.
Wow, so you were really looking for the right pick. San Francisco might have some issues right now with regards to companies staying. X recently moved out.
Yep.
So office availability should be higher, I think.
It depends where you are. So the thing, for those who haven't been to San Francisco, one of the things that you notice about the city is that it's patchier on a much smaller scale than other places I've lived before. You go 1 or 2 blocks over and it is an incredibly different environment. You might be in like a beautiful part of the city. You walk a block over and it's like manic, chaotic Mission Street, sprawling onto the road, markets everywhere. And then you go another block over and, there's perhaps an encampment there, tents everywhere. And you're like, where am I? Like, isn't this the place with the highest, like, was it per capita or per square mile density of billionaires in the world? One of the two. I can't remember which one it is.
Wow.
It's one of the two.
Either way.
I assume New York would beat it on per square mile because it's not that a density.
New York is very dense.
But by population. So let's assume that that's correct. But so either way, it's very way up there. It's really incredible, the diversity on a street by street basis.
You're literally walking across like a great street. There's like restaurants with all the booths outside, people chattering, and then you like walk under an underpass and it's camps and maybe a guy's looking at you.
You put on your Russian gas mask and you run by because there's a car on fire. Like that kind of stuff. So and it's true as well with offices because OpenAI moves into the north end of the Mission, right? And then all of a sudden, every AI company wants to be right by there. I don't know, I guess so their employees can be stolen by OpenAI. I'm not really sure what the draw is there, to be honest.
Right.
But it is a really cool part of the city. There's a climbing gym. It's a fun area. It's like a good commute because you can cycle.
For people who don't know, San Francisco, Mission is kind of like the more southern. It's a flatter part of San Francisco, I would say. There's not many hills. But then around, if you look around Mission, what I like is you can kind of see the hills and these like beautiful houses on the hills. So the views are still great. You're just looking up at the houses.
It's it's flatter. It's at the bottom of sort of a valley, which, I think valley, and in San Francisco that means something really steep. It's like a normal valley, not an SF valley.
Right.
And anyway, so that area, like, oh yeah, gonna try and find an office around there, like kind of nuts. But you go only a couple of blocks north for us into Soma, and we're like right on the edge of the two. It's almost a technicality, and like, yeah, you find some really incredible stuff for a great deal.
Yeah.
So
very cool. When the aesthetic in the office is really cool because it was an old brewery, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So you see these like huge pipes that I don't actually know how brewing works, but I know there's a lot of vats and transfer of liquids. Yep. So there's a bunch of that around.
There's a whole bunch of burners as well. Like we don't have them anymore, but in a brewery, in order to heat things, because there's a whole bunch of cooking your mash and that type of thing too. So
there's burners. How does a brewery burner, like, what does it look like? I'm imagining, which I'm sure is wrong, but I'm imagining like, a stove, like the starter light and like kind of that. It's probably not that. They probably want to contain the heat a little bit better.
I don't know, man. I reckon it might just
literally
look
just like basically a campfire on the floor.
Yeah.
How old was the brewery? Do you know?
So I know it was built, I think it was 2 years before Prohibition. Which was really unfortunate.
Oh, it was definitely a campfire on the floor, I think.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Do you know what years Prohibition were in the US?
Oh, man. The U.S. history knowledge. 1950s?
No, it was, surely. It was pre-World War II, wasn't it?
What World War II was, of course, the
Hey Siri,
40s?
When was the Prohibition in the US? God, thank God for... Hopefully Siri's getting better soon. Have you played with iOS 18 as well?
I have not. Did they finally do that thing where they brought in OpenAI? Because the day they do that is the day I probably start using Siri like religiously.
Yeah, right. So you can upgrade to iOS 18 beta already and play with that.
Okay.
So I have. And so what I tried before, and I was like, like the songs and whatever, it's trivial. It's like from 2014 or something. It's kind of a gimmick at this point. But I tried like, hey, Siri, can you Venmo Narayan $10 for whatever it was? And it's like, sorry, I don't know what Venmo is. And we're like, you're full of shit, Siri. Like, you've seen Venmo. It's on my phone. Like, come on. But they've created this, I think using the shortcuts interface, right?
Oh, so Siri can use shortcuts and then apps can expose shortcuts? Is that right?
So for a long time, Apple has had a shortcuts API, so apps can expose interfaces to do things,
Yeah.
And some of the bigger companies don't have, or a lot of the bigger companies don't have them because it's kind of been a little bit of a gimmick until now. But some smaller ones, I don't know, Notion, do something, Uber, get a car. I don't know if Uber actually has it. Waymo, get me a car to this at this time. But I think it's been a long play to basically get all of these hooks into the applications to do useful things, useful actions, so that now when Siri has had a major upgrade, it has access to all of this stuff.
Yeah, that's huge. That's huge. Yeah. Yeah, there's a bunch of... I saw a startup today that I think it's called ScreenPipe, and it just watches your screen with AI and then sends it in a file for like storage or something. But like, I think you also need that component with the shortcuts because like I'm just thinking about getting an Uber or whatever. I'm always like copy and pasting an address.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's like just like, can you pay Orion whatever showed up on the receipt is basically what I'd like to be able to say to an AI.
That's the promise. That's where they're going. But back to the office. So we also had some other sort of niche requirements that not every San Francisco startup, typically software, has. In that we need an engineering lab because we also a hardware company. And that requires some heavier equipment. It requires a bit more space. It requires correct zoning, ventilation, that type of thing.
Yep.
We looked at a few houses, but when you scale up to a place that has like at least a 2-car garage, which is kind of minimal viable workshop for us,
right.
We're like, this is a mansion and we would like have to live here for it to make sense.
Right.
My co-founder has a dog. We've both got partners. So that was really interesting option. We like genuinely looked at it and we're like, no, this we can't do. Come on, the places that met spec on the workshop didn't fit in other ways, basically.
Yeah, and I remember looking at a big garage, and it's like with all that air, sometimes it can like feel too cold or like just not like
not
the
super
vibe
comfy.
of a place you want to program or something like that. I don't know. It's weird.
Yeah, no, you're right. And we would have ended up, having the office and the living room and then the workshop in the garage, and then you split the company, and that's not the vibes we're going for.
Right.
So
cool.
The big open breweries, like, let us do both, book in those stores.
Yeah, and it's weird. A brewery is kind of aesthetic too, like the brick wall and stuff like that. It's like, no, I could definitely program in here. I don't know why, but like it clicks way more than like a concrete wall or something like that.
I love the brick.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Are you? I've never actually asked you much about your past. Are you from San Francisco, the Bay Area?
No. I so grew up in upstate New York. I was like across from a farm, but otherwise in like a pretty suburban setting. And then I went to Troy, New York for schooling. 5 years in Boston doing startups. So Boston is kind of a brick city.
Yeah. so is like a lot of upstate New York, isn't it?
Maybe. I cannot remember anything super distinct about it. Just feels suburban to me. I feel like if you go to suburbia anywhere in like Midwest or whatever, like maybe it changes based on how cold it gets or something like that. But like, I can't remember anything notable about the architecture.
Okay. Yeah. I agree with you. I absolutely love the brick. Yeah. So I'm from Melbourne, Australia. Went to Swinburne University there. And then when I graduated, I worked a job for about 5 months. I applied for 2 jobs at the same time. One got back to me and was like, yep, you're in, come on. And the other was in Germany. And the Germans pretty typically take a long time to do a lot of things. They really like their processes. So it was 5 months later, I applied for the jobs on the same night, and they finally got back and said, hey, do you want to come build flying cars? And I was like, yeah, like awesome.
Wow, that's huge. Wait, so the German company is the one that said that wanted to have you build flying cars?
So flying cars is a bit of a misnomer. The company's Lilium. They make sort of air taxis similar to Joby or Archer. I'd say those three are the big three there.
Oh, wow. What year was this? This
was 2020.
Oh, interesting.
I got there 2 months before the pandemic kind of kicked off,
Oh, interesting. Yeah, that definitely cut down commuting, the pandemic. So, how are they doing now? Do you know?
Lilium?
Yeah.
From what I've seen, they've they got in a new CEO, I want to say it's probably about a year ago now. And from what I've seen and what I've heard is like a bit of a gear shift in the company. They're just kind of sending it in a much more Silicon Valley type way. Because like when there's a whole bunch of unknowns, you can either accept that there are unknown unknowns and just kind of go find them by building, and sometimes that's the cheapest route, or you can assume that you can uncover them by studying sufficiently, which is typically true. Like you can go find them that way, and then you will spend potentially longer or shorter depending on where are and how well you know the thing. You can end up at what was the latest space shuttle V2 project that's been going on 20 years. No.
Is this a NASA program thing?
Yeah, it's a NASA program.
Oh, I zoned out. The attention span of someone, to keep up with something, it's got to be weekly.
It's got to be. Yeah. I mean, these days. So, not to stereotype too broadly, because it varies a bit city to city as well. Yep. But often Germany is very much on the let's research things and do things by the book end of things, and that makes them great at making cars.
I did see a tweet thread about the 2 countries that people thought built the highest quality products, who really did a lot of diligence on it.
Yep.
And it was Japan and Germany. And
I think it's largely true.
Yeah.
And when you know that, a car should have 4 wheels and 3 or 5 doors, depending on your exact shape of car, and an engine that works like this. Well, okay, your top level requirements are solid, and now the chunk size is correct, such that a person or a team of people can go tackle that problem rigorously with German level rigor.
Right.
And then you make an awesome car, right? But typically groups with those cultures, companies or countries, haven't done quite as well in the high novelty space, because you can't research your way out of novelty, and finding the right chunk size is really difficult. In fact, when you're doing novel things, a much smaller chunk size and a faster iteration cycle actually lets you go a lot faster, and that's why Silicon Valley does so well.
And there's engineering caution. There's also social caution, right? Like Uber was in many ways like social caution could have held it back.
Yep.
But and I think Uber ended up doing a lot of really, really good things. Like taxis used to not go to bad areas and stuff like that. But I can see how with flying cars, there's both. Like I worked for a company that did a little bit of stuff with truck aerodynamics. And part of what they did is they shot out air from the sides of the truck to try to change the profile. How air would go, and it was so loud. And what I've kind of gotten the impression of with most flying things, I'm super curious about this, is they're really loud. Like they push air, and air is loud to push. So I'm curious how they got around this, or how they thought about that, because that's a social issue, right? Like,
yeah, totally. Yeah. And they all Joby, Archer, and Lilium all acknowledged that from the get-go and tackled it in different ways. And so Lilium's approach is that they have ducted fans. And so the fan, unlike a helicopter, isn't exposed. And what that means is you can add all sorts of acoustic damping, liners, tuning, all sorts of sound deadening.
What does the sound profile look like? Like, is it really high at like, I don't know, 60 hertz or like something like that? Like, is it a particular, I mean, because helicopters sound away, they're kind of bassy, right?
Yep.
And I guess, how do you get around that? It feels like there's a lot of energy too in lower frequency sound. I could be wrong.
Yeah, no. So there's more. The human ear profile varies a lot as well. It's not necessarily just the energy in the sound.
Yeah.
It's actually like light, higher frequencies has inherently higher energy, but depending on your ear's response, it obviously caps out at 20 kilohertz.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And so there's a lot you can do, and I'll speak in broad terms because their acoustics are some of the more confidential things in
Gotcha. Yeah.
But in broad terms, you can do a few things. If you take a propeller which has specific resonances, and you have one primary lobe and then deteriorating lobes after that,
right?
You end up with quite a peaky sound. If you can spread that load over a much wider band, it's kind of more of a rushing sound and a much lower magnitude.
Right. Oh, very interesting. And you're saying that's because kind of how the human ear hears things. Like if you have a particularly high frequency, that's going to be heard more than kind of a spread.
If you have a really peak around a specific frequency, you'll hear that tone, and that tone will get you.
Yeah, it'll grate you.
Yeah, it'll grate you. And so all of these companies, and Joby showed off the same thing. I'm trying to remember the exact numbers, but a video now, 2 years ago or so, they're standing up 100 meters or so from the thing as it's taking off with the sound meter, and it was like they're recording and talking at the same time.
That's crazy.
It was sufficient to.
That's super quiet.
So it was nothing like a
Nobody's
helicopter.
Yelling or anything like that. Have you ever rode in a helicopter?
I have. Yeah, it was.
Where were you in a helicopter?
I was over the 12 Apostles, Victoria, Australia. So.
Oh, okay. 12 Apostles. That sounds like something I should know. I'm gonna Google image this just so I can fully appreciate it.
It's this sort of giant rock formation on the coast where it's eroded all of the a whole bunch of the underlying rock, and you end up with these huge stone pillars.
Oh yeah. Oh, this is beautiful. Wow.
Yeah, incredible stuff.
Really so they're kind of like on a beach, and they're just jutting out of the beach. These giant rock things.
They're enormous too.
Wow. Huh. Okay. Very cool. So. I did a helicopter ride over Kauai.
Oh, cool. I have really wanted to do that ever since Narayan did.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's pretty interesting. That was my first time in a helicopter, and I was with somebody who was terrified.
Oh.
They were like, because a lot of famous people have died in helicopters.
Did they kick on the Jurassic theme park song for you?
I don't think so. You know what? They might have.
Yeah.
They might have, because there's a thing you do where you kind of like go down and up, and it's like just what happened in Jurassic Park.
Go down the valley and then up the waterfall. Yep.
I haven't seen Jurassic Park.
What? Ever?
No, I haven't.
Damn. Okay.
It's one of the legendary films that's just not in my memory.
Wow. Not yet.
Not yet. Not yet. Does it stand up? I've noticed when you go to old movies, a lot of times they're kind of slow.
Okay.
They don't work with my TikTok brain.
You're on Twitter too much, aren't you?
Yeah, a little bit of Twitter, a little bit of TikTok. Actually, TikTok is kind of what got me and made me realize my brain didn't have a tolerance for the kind of attention grabbing that it did. Because yeah, I could do 3-4 hours on TikTok and it
Wow.
would wreck me.
Yeah. Wow.